Project log 34 start date. We had a really cool milestone and I had to make a video about it. Maybe milestone isn't the right thing. Maybe accomplishment is good. This is the ongoing saga that I about 4 weeks ago was listening to a random YouTube video, and it was about how this indie game got developed, and they specifically mentioned in the video that there existed this funding for interactive digital media products in Canada. And for me, this is exactly what I'm doing right now. And where I'd applied to all these other accelerators that would assist with funding, I'd had no luck. This is the best opportunity I've had in that regard since then. And at first blush, it was very exciting. Of course, you see it there, and then you want to get into it. You want to apply, but it requires a lot of attention to detail. There was just figuring out if you're eligible takes some significant reading. But I got through all that, and I made a video a little while ago. It was called just Positive Resistance. It was the idea that as soon as I started to get further into the application, I noticed that yes, well, there were many documents to fill out, that there's nothing insurmountable, and most of these are time-consuming rather than truly challenging, so doable. And then you start to feel like, oh, well, maybe this is actually a good thing, the difficulty that I'm experiencing now, because this difficulty has got to be discouraging for people. And so having the bar raised by, 3% often means that you have 50% less competitors. And this remained true during the course of the thing. The further I got into the application, the more involved everything was. And I was orchestrating this over three or four countries, because I'm collaborating with people in Canada, America, and Scotland, and I'm in Thailand. So all of these time zones are a bit tricky to make sure that everybody connects with everybody and was providing each other with all of the things that they needed. But we did. It was another impressive feat. It's like I'm happy to go past this just generally, because it means that we have now submitted the documents. As of last night at 5:30, yes, we have the application done, but I also have this feeling of, look at us, we're a cohesive team, we don't let things drag, we don't leave loose threads, and that's such a good omen for anything not related to the application itself. So that's cool. It has the additional knock-on effect when you do this is the other thing I'm trying to remember, is that it clarifies your vision, and if you are asked a question and you have to have an answer for it, that's the effect, right? So if they say, what's your budget? If you haven't thought about your budget, you have to make one. If you need to talk about what are the skills of your team members, now you got to write it all out. You have to be very aware of every single aspect of what you're doing. And that, I think, is useful whether or not you were even selected for the process, because you could use this for another application. You can use this just for clarity in terms of what you want to accomplish. So there was a million good reasons to do this. I thought it was such an interesting perspective where it shows a shift definitely in what's potential for you if you have an idea, because you go from applying for jobs to applying for grants. And that's a pretty cool thing to do, I gotta say. I prefer it. I'm more interested in that because, of course, you have a personal investment in it. It's literally, your cash money going into the thing to make sure that it's gonna succeed. But aside from the sort of tactical things that you learn and the teamwork cohesion, it's just really cool when you've been working on something like, we've been working on the project now, the website, for a year, but this was, as soon as we picked this up, it was another 4 weeks of dedicated figuring all of this out. And then once it was done, so you got all of these documents and you've now got to, it opened up last night at 12 o'clock, you could go and you could start making this application. The application is like another of what you have just done with all this other paperwork. It was making me laugh a little bit because I was like, is the point of this now to discourage people once they fill out the paperwork, that when they now need to submit it, that it's so frustrating that they give up there too? I was like, this is helpful, again, if it's just going to be this positive resistance thing. But I got through it, and I was just counting the documents at the end. I think I said 18 before, but as the application went on, it grew into something like 22 or 23. And many cases, these are like several page documents. Some of them I wasn't maxing out because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like there was one of them that was like your content form, like this is your biggest, what does it do? How are you going to monetize it? Why is it unique? What is the what's the traction it's going to have in the market? What part of the market share are you going to get? Things like that. You could write up to 15 pages for that, except we have a tiny, tiny little company. So I think that's more for if you were like an indie game studio, like the one that I found out about. You might use something like that to its full extent. But there were places that I was going to be a little less. Still doesn't matter. Even with a tiny company, the amount of detail is excruciating, but in a good way. So just as a final detail, I did this stupid thing. Let this be a lesson. If I ever watch this video and be like, read every document to the very end. Because I left one last document, which was, it was basically saying that you own the company, and it's a Canadian company, and these are the shareholders on the company, and it's confirming that you are in fact real. I think that's a lot of it, is that they could just say, yeah, it seems like a company, give them money, and then it just disappears. So you have to be careful about that fact. You got to know that the thing is real. On that application, I assumed it just needed me, right? I'm the founder and I'm legally responsible for all this stuff. But I had put my brother on the board of directors because he's super helpful. We put him there as a consultant, and he's given me all sorts of interesting information. But then I find out at the very bottom of the page that if he's going to be on the board of directors, there's this other account that he needs to set up, and he has to register for that. So in the end, it was fine. But it could have been avoided if I had just read through. It's this, maybe the greatest lesson of all is just, you can never assume anything. You can, you try, and I think that we do that. That's our brain, future predictors. We're always doing it, but oh boy, you just never know until you've seen it and read every line exactly, what you are capable and incapable of doing. So I read that, figured it out, apologized to my brother. He's getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's like 10 o'clock at night for me. He's got to do his work, but he did eventually. He was like, yep, I got this stuff. He set it up right away, got it off to me. And then, as I said, at like 5:30 in the morning, we put the application through. So now, for anybody who's managed to make it this far and not fallen asleep, or maybe you want to fall asleep, that's a good thing. Just relax. Now that we've done this application and it opened up on the 16th, it has until, you are allowed to submit an application until May the 2nd. So this is another way that we were being proactive. We were like, is it open for submit? And then we got it in. But we have that window of time, and a really cool thing about this, and it'll be interesting, which video will I make? So a really cool thing about this Canadian Media Fund is, like, unlike other accelerators, which you couldn't fault them for, this one tells you your result and why you got the result you got. So I can actually expect that they will confirm whether I am successful or not. It's not just going to fade into the void and I wonder forever if I was or was not rejected until several months pass and I can just assume. Instead, they're going to let me know, and they're going to tell me why. So that's useful too, for anybody out there in the rarest circumstance who might want to apply for something like this. Learn from my mistakes. That's the cool part of this. I was thinking, if anybody ever had like a little bit of an itch, these videos could be good because we have no backing. We're a tiny team where, it's difficult to create funding in that circumstance, but we have a good idea. And it could explode into something incredible. So you might get to watch a really interesting arc here. And I hope that it's useful in that way, because you could have seen the period of uncertainty that I'm talking about. I find it's always a funny thing to speak to someone after they've succeeded and done whatever they wanted to do. It's not a bad position to talk from. There's lots that you learned along the way, but I think that there's something valuable, especially before you've succeeded, because I think people need more the perseverance than the success, because it's the perseverance that gives them success. Whereas if you're talking about the success afterwards, it's you've already made it and there's not much to be gained there. It's fun to listen to people who is like, when I made my $40 billion, you're like, that's awesome. And it's cool for a podcast listen, but if you really want to know what is the personal experience like of trying to do a small team startup, it's like this. Although perhaps The one thing I would recommend, although you don't have to, is that maybe it's easier when the team is not so remote. But if you do have very confident people, then you can work remote, and it's not a big deal. It's totally fine. It's been great. It's been really good. We are a great team, though. Cool. Well, yeah, I wanted to give this update, this journal entry in this very important moment here. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Cool milestone, cool journal. I'll be doing lots of random updates as we go. As you know, I never shut up. I always keep talking. Sign of early onset dementia. That's all. Cool. Don't do anything they tell you to do at the end of YouTube videos.